If you've been watching the early episodes of the podcast, then you'll have heard both Sylvester de Souza and Luke Morris, the first two interviewees on In the Saddle with, mention the name Tom Marquand as the best up-and-coming young rider that this country has to offer. So for episode 4, I'm delighted to say that we are in the saddle with Tom Marquand, with British racing back underway on the day that we're recording this. Tom is due to have his first rides tomorrow, but pleased to say that he's taken time out of the evening ahead to join us. Hi, Tom.
Hi, all right.
Yeah, all good. You'll be looking forward to the weeks ahead, I suppose, now raring to go.
Yeah, obviously it's been a bit of a long wait. I was lucky I managed to sort of get an extra 3 or 4 weeks out of riding than most over here. But yeah, I'm rev to get back in the saddle and get racing again.
Yeah, as you say, it's been a longer wait for a lot of people than it was for you, and that's because you had that spell over in Australia. And rather than go back to the start of your career just yet, we'll have a look back on the last few weeks, because it's been a tremendous few weeks for you. Obviously, for most of the world, we've been in lockdown. You were in Australia to a degree, but there was racing going on behind closed doors, and you took it by storm.
Yeah, I was extremely unfortunate, to be honest with you, because obviously I spent last winter out there. I'd planned to go back this winter. I did sort of 6 weeks in January, February, and I was thinking I was going to go back for the Golden Slipper for maybe just like 10 days, 2 weeks, just to go over and ride in such a prestigious race. And William Haggas actually called me up and sort of asked if I'd like to ride a day with young rascal over there while I was doing that and extend my stay a bit. And obviously jumped at the opportunity, and timing could not have worked out better with everything that ended up happening with
the timing works out pretty well, as you say, in the end. Sorry, our internet connection or mine in York isn't that great, so hopefully it's coming through all right. But the timing worked out well for you, and you got on those Haggas horses, Addeybb in particular, and you won 2 Group 1s on him, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, he was exceptional, to be honest with you. He won his first Group 1 by, I think it was 3/4 length to Very Elegant, who actually came out the week later and won a Group 1 by about 5 lengths. The fact that we had a bit up our sleeve from that first Group 1, the Randwick Stakes, and we were hoping we'd get a bit more rain for the second day. And the rain came. It was softer grounds, and he took the field apart. To be honest, there was sort of probably no other way to describe it than that.
Yeah, and you'd already, obviously, you said that the rides for William Haggas came around. You kind of extended your stay, but you'd already sort of been among the winners, and not just day-to-day winners either. Some big winners already for some local trainers out there in this spell.
Yeah, I've been extremely fortunate with the support I've received over there, because obviously, I can only ever go for a couple of months at a time, and everyone's well aware of that, but it doesn't really seem to put anyone off using me, which is great. So I went over for John O'Shea initially, and I mean, there'd only be 1 or 2 trainers in the whole of Sydney I can think that didn't ride for in my time there. And I was lucky. I sort of picked up a few group races for Kieran Maher and David Eustace, and we won one of the big 2-year-old races, the 2 million English Millennium Stakes for Michael Friedman and Michael and Richard Friedman, should I say. So it was a fantastic stay.
How does the racing, how does it differ in Australia to what it's like in Britain?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a hell of a lot of difference in the fact that it's very pace-based and tempo-based, rather than, in England, obviously we sort of rely a hell of a lot more on rhythm and things like that. But I've enjoyed it, and I don't know, for whatever reason, it seems to suit the way I ride, and I don't have to make a conscious decision to change too much. So I'm pretty lucky in that regard. So
do you feel that you've learned by being out in Australia, or do you just think that your style of riding seems to naturally suit the way that races are there?
I think I've definitely learned a hell of a lot, but I think equally as much my riding style does seem to fit there. For whatever reason that is, it does seem to work. And but no, I mean, I think it certainly makes you conscious of that and why you're making decisions, and the racing's very sharp and there's not a lot of room for error.
Yeah, fine margins, and you've got to be on it. When you say that it's very much pace based, is that they're sort of riding to fractions and you kind of get hung out to dry if you're going too quick and that kind of thing? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and I mean, it's sort of probably the closest similarity would be French racing. They go out, get a pitch, the race settles, and they only sprint for like a furlong and a half, 2 furlongs. So it's very tactical as to what position you end up in, and according to what speed the race is sort of taking everyone along at.
You said there that it seems to suit your style out in Australia. How would you describe your riding style?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, like it's not something. Again, it's not something you really make a conscious decision of doing. But I mean, I think a lot of the trainers down there seem to appreciate the sort of bit more. I don't know whether it's a bit more aggressive style of riding from like the European side and English and Irish side of it. But yeah, I mean, whatever it is about it, something seems to work there.
Yeah. If you were thinking about yourself as a rider, and I know that people quite often don't like sort of assessing themselves in public, but it must be something that to have made the progress that you've made at such an early stage of your career and the level that you've got to. What do you see as sort of your greatest assets in the saddle?
I don't know. I guess it is pretty hard now. So I'd like to think that I'd be a quick learner. Obviously, everything happened very quick from the word go, and I've never felt overly bogged down trying to take everything in and take it all on board. So I don't know. I guess that would probably be one of the main things, because if you don't learn while you're on the go, you do get left behind. So yeah, I guess it's probably that.
Yeah, I spoke to both Silvestre and Luke about this for this podcast, and I asked them both this question actually, and they gave very different answers. So it'll be interesting to see what you say. In terms of preparation for a ride, do you do a lot beforehand, or do you rely on sort of a feel of the horse going down to the post and seeing what you think of it at that point? Both of them kind of did prep beforehand, and both of them got some sort of a feel from what the horse was like on the way down. But Luke was much more pre-race prep, and Silvestre was much more like he'll find out once he gets on board the horse, it seemed.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would be probably more towards Silvestre's way, because there's so much you can do beforehand, and you get on a horse and it's completely different. Like it could be flat in the season. It could be, do you know what I mean? There's so many variables with them. So I mean, I think purely basing your opinion on a horse from not stats alone, but form alone and things like that, when actually, I've found a hell of a lot of times I probably won on horses that I wouldn't have won on if I'd have looked up all their previous races and that. I've been lucky. I've had a few big price winners, and if I'd have really dug in, I'd have gone, what's the point in trying hard on this? Whereas you get on, you ride the horse for how it feels, and sometimes they can pull it out of the bag and win just because you haven't made a sort of pre-race assessment of them. Which there's definitely days that it's been a big help being like that. But equally, there's certainly a time and a place for studying races and going into form. Like the big days seem to be, the races are much more predictable. Yeah.
The horses, I suppose, are more consistent. They're more reliable. Exactly. And you know what you're going to get with those horses.
That's it. I mean, going to Bath, Chepstow, 7 rides. Like I'd know all my rides. I'd look at them. I'd know where I was drawn, what trip they were. But past that, there's only a certain degree of, I think, how much you actually need to know before it actually starts harming your riding. If that kind of makes sense. I know it's probably a bit of an alien thing to a lot of people, but I've personally found that it's always worked.
Yeah. And so do you rely a little bit on speaking to the trainer beforehand in a sense of what they expect you to do, and then you try and carry that out if you can, but it's very much how the horse is and whether it's got the ability to do what they want it to do?
Without doubt. I mean, the trainers are the lucky ones that see the horses every day. They know the ins and outs of their characters and their assets and their downfalls, I suppose. So, if you don't take on board what a trainer says before you ride them, I mean, you really are starting from scratch. Whereas if you're listening to them and taking in what they're saying, I guess it makes your job a good bit easier because you half know what to expect.
Yeah. Let's go back to the early part of your career. In truth, we're still in the early part of your career. How old are you now? Early 20s?
22, yeah.
Yeah, 22. So it's still an early part of your career, but over 400 domestic winners on the board, I think. So it's been a flying start to your career, and it was a flying start right from the start in a way, because you were champion apprentice within a year of having your first ride, I think.
Yeah, it was a pretty sort of whirlwind start to it all. Obviously, I went to Richard Hannon's, hoping I'd sort of get going, I guess, in time. I didn't really expect all that. I expected and wanted to do well, but I didn't think it would go anywhere near as well as it did. But I think a lot of it, Richard was a massive help in that first year, but I think for whatever reason, a lot of different trainers just seemed to pick me up, and I rode winners for a lot of different people, and I was very lucky that everything got going fast enough to be able to ride enough winners to be champion apprentice that year.
Yeah, and I think it was 67 winners on the board that year, so it was a good haul as well. It's people talk about being able to ride out your claim too quickly. Was that a worry at any stage that you were just rattling off through it? Because you said everyone seemed to want to use you straight away. Every trainer, it was quite clear. Marquand £7 is tremendous value, and you were just being used by anyone and everyone really if they could get hold of you. So was there a danger, or was that anything that you considered?
I mean, to be honest with you, from a personal point of view, it wasn't really something that I was that worried about. But yeah, everyone says it, and it just puts it in the back of your mind, and you actually do think, oh, are they right? But there's no way of knowing until you get to that point, and luckily, I sort of never even really suffered a dip at all. It was just flat out and kept building and building from there.
To go into the career in the way that you did, starting in the fashion that you did, and as we said, champion apprentice within a year of your first ride, you must have already had some experience, did you? You must have had some sort of a background in the sport. Did you do pony racing or anything?
Yeah, I did a good bit of pony racing. I was quite a late starter compared to some. I only started pony racing at sort of age late 13. And I had no family background within racing, so look, I had a good solid base, but by no means as much experience as some people. But it was a great grounding and a great way to learn and sort of go through the motions as to what would actually happen when it comes down to the real thing.
So, age 13, you started riding?
Oh, I started riding like at a young age, but only once a week, pony like riding lessons once a week until sort of, I don't know, maybe 10, 11, 12. And then I got my first pony, and just a regular pony, and messed about with bits like that until I started pony racing later.
So you said that there was no sort of family background in racing. Was it just a love of horses that got you into the sport then?
Yeah, complete love of horses. And, we live near Cheltenham as well. So I guess that's probably quite a strong catalyst in the reason I got into racing. And, I had family involved with horses, but, not anything racy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, it was a strange one because I was always dead set on just the fact that I was going to become a jockey.
Yeah, that's what you wanted to do. Being near Cheltenham, did you ever think jumping might be the thing? I guess with your size, it would never have been a consideration, was it?
Well, no, I mean, to be honest with you, until I started riding out for Tony Carroll, when I was, I guess, late 14, I was actually just thinking I was going to be a jump jockey because I didn't really I wasn't that far into it to really understand the significance in the difference of being a flat jockey to being a jump jockey is where I wanted to be. So yeah, I mean, and at that point, I still, even aged 15, going towards 16, I was still kind of thinking, oh, well, if I ride a couple of years on the flat first and get too big, well, happy days, I'll go jumping. So I'm pretty glad now.
You've given up on the jumping idea for the time being.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I was a bit naive to what those boys go through.
Yeah. You said Tony Carroll was where you started riding out, but Richard Hannon, was he the person that you started with as an apprentice from the get-go, or did you start with Tony Carroll and then move to Hannon very early?
No, I went straight to Hannon's, and Tony was great. I mean, he sort of openly said before, this isn't the place for you to go apprentice. You need to go somewhere else. So, that was massive. So I went down to Richards, and yeah, I mean, it's got to be said, it was probably one of the best things I ever did going down there, because it couldn't have got off to a better start. And even to this day, I'm still fortunate to be in the position to be still riding for him.
Yeah, it's been a cracking association. A lot of good apprentices have gone through the hands. Does it help that there's just so many horses in a yard like that it gives you a chance to get going?
Yeah, I think so. With ammunition probably comes a bit of confidence, and horses like Oh This Is Us came along while I was claiming 5 or 3, possibly 3, and I won a 100-gram handicap on him, and that was sort of one of my first really significant winners. And normally, I guess, if you were in a 50 horse yard, that would be the very best horse in the yard, so you probably wouldn't be able to get that to ride that as an apprentice. But being a 200-300 horse yard, while he is an extremely good horse, he was by no means the very best. And I guess, yeah, it just gives them the confidence to give someone a chance on horses like that.
Yeah, if I think back to the early part of your career, he's sort of the horse that springs to my mind as one that really put you on the map as a rider. And helped you propel your career. And the fact that you've mentioned him there suggests you feel the same. But as you said, that was more once you were a 3-pound claimer. So you were fairly well established. Before that, there have been a couple of the Henry Ponsonby horses, weren't there? The likes of On to Victory that you did well on.
Yeah. And obviously the continued association with Who Dares Wins as well has been great. He's been a cracking horse, picking up Northumberland Plate last year, and he's given me a couple of spins in the Chester Cup. So, Henry was, again, one of the people who, yes, helped me burn through my claim, but B, absolutely fully backed me afterwards. And those are the relationships that are very hard to come by with owners and trainers, because it's very easy to use someone for a 5-7 pound claim. But I guess when Henry was still sticking me up as a 3 and when I turned professional, it just shows the real measure of people, I guess.
Yeah. If you were to name then the key horses of the early part of your career, would the likes of those horses that we've just said be the key ones, or is there something that we've missed out?
No, I mean, definitely those two would be high up on the list. I mean, Anna Nearim would probably have to be in there, although she was a touch later. She was my first group winner. She won the Dick Bull, and then she won the Guineas Trial, and she gave me a win last year on Derby Day. She's been a cracking horse, and just another one that really sort of got me somewhere on a big day. Yeah.
And you said there about sort of keeping those relationships with people that kept on backing you, the likes of Henry Ponsonby and various trainers. Alan King uses you quite a lot. Lots of different trainers want to use you, and you've managed to keep those relationships. Is that something that you're constantly been able to do? Because you've ridden for us a couple of times, the partnership that I'm involved with horses. I don't think you've actually had any success for us, but we keep on being happy to use you because of the way that you deal with the owner, I suppose. And is that something that you see as important?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, owners are the people that hold up horse racing realistically. Without an owner, a trainer can't train a horse. Without an owner, a jockey can't ride a horse. Without an owner, there's no stable staff to look after the horses. So, I certainly think it's a hugely important part of a jockey's job is to get owners involved and give them as much feedback and positivity when positivity is needed, and truth when truth is needed. So it's always something I've been well aware of how important it is.
Do you sometimes have to tailor your post-race response to who you're riding for? Are there some people that they don't really want to hear the truth there and then in front of the owners, and you've kind of got to gloss it up a little bit, and other people you'll know that you can just be brutally honest with?
Yeah, without doubt, and that comes with experience and how often you ride for people, and once you develop these relationships, you probably get to a point where, well, what's the point in glossing up, because they know what you're thinking anyway, and you know what they're thinking. So it's kind of it's all about developing relationships and sort of getting to grips with where you all are and what you're sort of able to say to different people. And I've always found 99% of the time people just want honesty. So while you don't have to tell them their horse can't run any faster than themselves, there's always an element of no one wants to be sort of mugged off or put away, or however you want to put it. There has to be an element of truth always.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, it's not helpful to them, is it?
Exactly. Yeah.
People want to learn. Part of your job is to give feedback to help the horse next time, I suppose. And sometimes you learn as much from the negatives of the positives. If you were to kind of think about yourself as a rider and teaming up with a horse, we spoke there about some of the good relationships, the good tune that you got out of some horse along the way. What is the ideal kind of horse for you? Because, I spoke to Sylvester and Luke about this, and they both have I almost ask the question and know the answer, whereas actually with you, I don't really know what the ideal horse for you is. What do you think it is?
In all honesty, I'm not fussy. I'm a huge fan of a horse that drops their head and will just run. Do you know what I mean? I know that sounds stupid because in theory that's what all of them do, but there's just particular horses that you can feel they just, when they get to the brink of where they kind of think, oh, they're going to curl up now, and they just drop down again and just run. So I think run style, I'd be completely unswayed as to which way, because like Addeybb won from the front in the Randwick, thoroughly enjoyed that, setting fractions and then really toughing out the finish. Equally, I love riding horses like, oh, this is us, so you can ride them off the speed and use a turn of foot. So I think just having that gritty attitude it does it for me.
Yeah, either way, there's not so you're pretty much the same as me. You're not gonna say a preference one way or another. You don't see yourself as a horse that tanks along and
no, exactly.
There's not a specific type. Do you ever get a bit of a buzz? You said there that you like those genuine ones that relax, they drop their head, they give you everything. Do you ever get a buzz out of winning on one of those horses that really isn't like that, and you kind of have to make its mind up for it?
Yeah, I mean, there's always winners that you look like you've given them a great ride, when realistically it's been probably one of the easiest rides you've ever had. But I think as a jockey, you always know when you pulled up and you've won on something that probably didn't really have much of a right to be winning. And deep down, that to the outside, to the public or whatever, it probably doesn't look that way. So yeah, I think you certainly get an extra bit of a kick out of rides like that.
Talk there of good rides. Good rides aren't always winning rides.
No.
And particularly in the early part of a horse's career, and being associated with the Hannons, you must do an awful lot of work in the morning with 2-year-olds as well as on the racetrack. How do you have to differ, or do you have to differ, the way that you ride a horse very early on in its career, on its debut, first couple of runs, to once they are an old hand at the game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Richard's sort of a dab hand with early 2-year-olds. But now that they've got some extremely nicely bred horses that need a bit more time and a bit more patience. So it's not always now 5 furlong, jump, run, and go for everything. And I've certainly found that riding more and more for William Haggas because, renowned for horses to have a nice education run first time, jump, travel. Obviously, give them every chance, but he doesn't want them beaten up or anything like that, which I think pays so much in the long run, because it teaches horses how to do everything properly. So, I'm a big fan of starting horses off racing like that because it just builds the foundations for a sort of a genuine racehorse.
Yeah. Do you think horses can go the other way then if they're not given that kind of introduction?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we've all seen horses that have had to be sort of roughed up a bit to win first time out, and they look nice, and then they just never fulfil the potential. And I think it probably has got a hell of a lot to do with that. If they realistically, if they're given a nice time first time and they enjoy it, and they go back to the race the second time and then win their race, I think it can mould a horse into a very different type of racehorse.
So let's move on to the future, starting with the season ahead. The William Haggas link up, obviously, from Australia. You'll be hoping that carries on with similar success in Britain this year, alongside the regular rides for Richard Hammond, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's going to be a big season, hopefully, off the back of last year. But I don't, I'm not a stable jockey anywhere. I'm not contracted in anywhere, so it's quite an interesting one because I don't really know what to expect, to be honest with you. I'm hoping to ride as many horses for William as I can. Obviously, he's got a great team, and equally so for Richard and all the other trainers that support me. So, yeah, I mean, I guess technically I'm freelance, but with strong ties. But yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, as you say, freelance with some strong ties, some excellent link-ups. Is one of the long-term goals for you to kind of get one of those big retainers that allows you to get on quality horses? To some degree, that must be what every jockey wants.
Yeah, without doubt. I think there's a handful of jobs that are at the top of the game, and those are the ones everyone wants. So, because they're the ones everyone wants, they're not easy to come by. They're not easily passed down from man to man. So, yeah, I mean, they're a hard graft to get to, but hopefully one day it's something that can happen. And yeah, I mean, I obviously have that sort of in my targets, hopefully, for one day.
One of the ways to get into that job, and I'm sure that you're kind of on the path to whichever one of those big jobs it might be. I'm sure you're on the path to it at some stage, but one of the ways that people kind of get that job is by being a champion jockey when they're in the kind of position that you're in at the moment, being a freelance with lots of ties to good yards. Is a jockey's championship something that you have got your eye on at some stage in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's high on the priority list. I've sort of openly said the last couple of years it's something that I'd love to achieve, and it's always been something that I've had my eyes on. So, while it's extremely tough to do in this country, and we've got such an incredible sort of pool of jockeys, but yeah, I mean, I'd love to be in a position to challenge for it one day.
Are you going to be one of everyone that you speak to about this? They kind of say that you can't really decide at the start of the season that that's what you're going for. You've just got to start the season busy. And if you're in a position at the end of July, then that's when you start thinking about it. Is that the way that you'd see it? At some point, you'll just end up thinking, right, I'm now going for it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know Champion Apprentice is extremely different. It's like the baby's version of, isn't it? But, that's what happened with that. And I think I certainly operate best when I'm not really thinking about an awful lot else by riding winners. And I think it's very easy to overthink things like that. You can be in June and I guess in a normal season, there'll be a jockey that could be 25, 30 winners ahead already by then, and they still won't win it. So, what's the point of worrying about it until later in the year?
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose one of the things that anyone that's going to be a champion jockey has to have alongside the link-ups and the connections to get enough rides is a work ethic and a willingness to dart around the country, do 2 meetings a day during the hard months of the summer and be extremely busy. I assume that's something that you're willing to do and at your age in a position to do, particularly when your girlfriend is doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I thought about it a lot last year. While I was extremely busy, I was no way, I was certainly not in a position to challenge for champion jockey. But I think last year I was going sort of, I think on average, like maybe between 120 and 145, 50 rides a month. I mean, if you're doing that, you're doing the same driving, the same traveling. You're probably just going for 1 or 2 rides less a day than the person that's actually going for champion jockey, which is pretty nuts to think about, really. So I think I've been through the traveling and whatnot. I don't mind doing that. It's something that I'd be more than willing to sacrifice for the sake of being champion jockey. I'd sacrifice a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, and the other thing that you'll need, I suppose, is the stamina to keep on going and keep fresh. But you're a bit of a fitness freak, I think, looking at your bike rides and your runs.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a weirdo. Like I've always enjoyed it, but like today, actually, I did 24 miles on the bike, and then this evening I went out and I jogged 6 miles just to freshen up for tomorrow. So I enjoy that side of it. I'm young. I'm lucky in the fact that I've got plenty of energy still.
And if you had to choose long-term goal-wise about being like a multiple champion jockey, or being one of those riders that is, say, like Frankie is now, where you pick and choose your spots and you just completely focus on the quality, is there one way or the other that you'd like to go? Would you like to have the lot?
I think I want to have my cake and eat it, to be honest with you. Yeah.
That's the way that you'd like to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. Look, it's going to be pretty tough to get to that point. But if you're not doing it and dreaming, what's the point? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, at your age, I think that's exactly the way you've got to be thinking. Talking of the season ahead, as we said right at the start, about to get underway from your point of view in this country tomorrow. Is there a couple of horses that you're particularly looking forward to for this year?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was lucky to sit on a hell of a lot of nice horses last year, and one of them actually comes out on Wednesday, Born with Pride. She won a listed race first time out. She was sort of highly touted after that, and she looks an extremely nice prospect for this year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing her on track Wednesday, and it'll be interesting to see how she's taking the winter, because obviously no one really knows until they set foot on a race course. And the other one, I suppose he was a lot more exposed than she was, but Threat, he's done exceptionally well for the winter. He looks great. He won a gym crack, and he certainly looks the part. So I mean, he'd be certainly one to look out for the big days.
Excellent. And before you go, Tom, just a few quick fire questions for you. Put you on the spot with 1 or 2 on the back of those horses to follow. So we'll rattle through these as quick as we can. What was your first ride?
Here for Good. He was called at Lingfield for Richard Hannon, which I thought was a pretty cool name to have the first ride on.
And your first winner?
Mikado at Kempton. I think he was about maybe 3 weeks later, 20 odd rides in.
Was it what kind of race was that in?
Oh, it was a cellar. I've got the race card in my in our toilet frame. So it was a 4 or 5 run a cellar. It's great.
Favourite track to ride at?
I love Goodwood. Just nice atmosphere and gorgeous track.
Least favourite?
For the amount of luck I have there, I have no idea why, but Brighton. All I do is every time I go there, I seem to ride a winner, but I don't know. It's Brighton.
The jockey that you admire the most?
cliche, but Ryan, I'm lucky to sit by him a hell of a lot. So, he's someone that I've been lucky to have quite a lot to do with, and really respect how much he's dedicated himself to being a jockey.
And sticking on the jockey theme, the most underrated rider in the weighing room?
Underrated. Dave Probert?
Yeah?
Yeah. He should have been, in my eyes, he should be a Group 1 winning jockey by now.
Yeah, good answer. A different answer to what we've had previously. Best young jockey?
Obviously we've not really had too much of a chance to see new lads over the winter, but Kieran Fallon, off the back of last year, he looks like he's going to be a force to reckon with. Yeah.
Best ride you've ever given a horse?
This Is Us on a Lingfield Finals day.
Was that in the Apprentice handicap?
No, it was was it the mile? I think it was the mile.
Yeah. Try and think.
Can't remember. It was a Balls of Steel one. at the bottom of the straight, I was going, oh God, what have I
done? That kind of ride can work at Lingfield, though. So
yes,
that was the best one.
Exactly.
It sounded like maybe it could have been one of your worst. What was your worst?
I don't know. I didn't give him a bad ride or anything, but it's one I'd certainly love to go back and change. It was Threat last year in the Coventry. Like, things just went wrong that we didn't need to go wrong, and obviously we ended up finishing second to Arizona.
Yeah, I had a good bet on Threat that day. I don't think you did a great deal wrong.
Yeah. No, it was just one of them. You'd love to go back and just preempt what actually happened. He went in off the back of one run in a 4-runner race. The lack of experience probably made it pretty tricky for him. But yeah, I'd love to go back and try again.
Yeah, have another go at that. So
yeah, exactly.
On that note, you'll be looking forward to Ascot. It's coming up early in the season this year.
Yeah, obviously, really looking forward to it. It's pretty tricky to know what are the standout horses, really, I guess, because no one really knows what's going to be going there at the moment.
No, absolutely. Particularly with the 2-year-olds, it'll be quite tricky. But over the coming weeks, we'll learn plenty on that front. Tom, thanks very much for taking time out to join me for In the Saddle with. Absolute pleasure to speak with you, and hopefully I'll see you on a racecourse at some point soon.
Not at all. Thank you for having me on.
Cheers, Tom.